Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Dexter. This is their part number C2000 STRM R 605 SFIC. This is a grade 2 cylindrical lever lock, and the first part of this video is going to cover a visual tour of the item, of the contents of the box, everything that we're going to get. We're going to go over the installation instructions. We will go over the template that's here as well. And first of all, of course, the lock itself. Grade 2, which means it's compliant with a 500,000 cycle. Storeroom function. Exterior is always rigid. You always need a key to come in. The interior is always unlocked and always provides free egress. Okay. This is small format interchangeable core, meaning that this is prepped for a small format core, best obviously. Falcon, Arrow, and any of its clones, any of the best clones. And cylinder is not included. You have to be sure to provide a cylinder for this. If you're buying small format, you are quite likely very familiar with small format. There is going to be a 2 3/4 latch bolt that's included. Okay, 2 3/4. We'll go over the dimensional properties of this. You're going to get a cup. You will receive 2 tail pieces, a 6 and a 7 pin. 7 pin is going to be a little bit shorter because there's more length on the cylinder itself when it's 7 pin. You'll get a 4 7/8 strike. We'll go over those dimensions. Intended for a hollow metal frame. And you'll get your screw package to put everything together. There's more screws here than I'd like to see. We'll go over what all of these screws do, and then the screws for the latch and the strike. Then, of course, your push pin or your emergency tool. Pardon me, it's not an emergency tool. It's just a release tool is all it is. Okay? We're going to get the template, which is linked to down below. We have the installation instructions, which are linked to down below, which we're going to go over. Let's start off with going over the extended description down below. This is a grade 2 lock again, 500,000 cycles. Nothing's to say it wouldn't go to 5 million cycles, but it's met grade 2 requirements before, they tested it to grade 2, 500,000 cycles. UL listed up to 3 hour. That's important. And the latch bolt bears evidence of the UL and the F. Those are both indications that it is not only a listed product, but it is labeled as well. This would be appropriate for use on a fire door, which means it's been tested for applications on fire-rated doors, up to 3 hour. Door thickness, it'll work from 1 3/8 to 1 3/4. This is a dead latch style latch bolt, meaning when the dead latching tab is retained, you can't Lloyd the latch bolt. Okay, without that being retained, you could just push that in. A proper installation would keep that retained when it's installed in the strike. Latch dimensions, 1 1/8 by 2 1/4. We'll touch on that when we get to the template. Again, 2 3/4 backset. It is an ASA strike. That's a 4 7/8 strike. That's 4 7/8 by 1 1/4. 1 1/4 is the center line of the mounting holes to the edge of the lip. A storeroom function. We'll go over that. Non-clutching, that means this lever is just rigid. It will not, it's not going to rotate. It's fixed. It's not a clutch design that will rotate even though the lock is locked. And it is in the bright brass, or what would be called a 632 finish. They're calling it 605. Probably just, they should call it US 3. 605 means that this is made of solid brass, which I'm quite positive it's not. Less interchangeable core, so be mindful of that. And sold as each. When you buy one, you will be sent one. And now, let's go over the links that are down below this video to the installation, template, cross-reference, and product catalog, and we'll switch to the screen view in order to review those documents. Okay, so this is the item that we're looking at here, and the image as seen here is a generic image. We're dealing with 605 polished brass. Okay, and these are the links down here that we're gonna look at first. Let's go over the product catalog because that will give us an overview. Then we'll get into installation template and then a cross-reference chart, which is just a handy document when you're looking at different manufacturers' lock sets. So let's start with product catalog. And so Dexter is a part of a Legion. Under that umbrella, in terms of locks, you're certainly going to have Schlage and Falcon. Door closers from Exit Device and Falcon. Door closers from LCN and Falcon. Exit devices from Von Duprin and Falcon. Under Falcon is the name Monarch and Doromatic. I think they've changed the branding to just Falcon. So we're dealing with the C2000 series. So let's jump down to page 6 for that. Okay. So again, a grade 2 door, grade 2 lock for a UL 3-hour door. 1 3/8, 1 3/4. This is all of the same information that we've pulled out of the extended description, so nothing really new there. They are showing us regular curved ball in terms of trim. Okay, so regular curved and then ball, that can be defined here on the page, on page 8 of the catalog. Regular lever, curved lever, and then ball knob. Okay, and since we're in this area of other options, polished brass 605, oil rub bronze 613, 626 is satin chrome, and 630 is stainless steel. Let's scroll back up to the master list of functions, and as we zoom out, we can see that we have 2 pages of functions here. Okay, single dummy trim in the finishes and designs, passage, privacy, okay, entries, and so on. We are dealing with the storeroom function, which will be down here. Okay, and we are dealing with 605 in the regular trim, except that we're doing small format. So regular trim 605, less small format. And this is indeed our lock right here. Okay. Parts. You can buy different latch bolts. If you need a 2 3/8 latch bolt, that's available for your keyed lock sets. You'll want DL for dead latch versus SL for spring latch. Spring latch is not for use on a keyed entry lock because it can be lloyded or tampered with quite easily, but is standard for passage and privacy sets. Different strikes, radius corner full lip, radius corner, 2 different finishes. 4 7/8 strike, and then 2 3/4 strike. So the full lip strike, there's 3 strikes here. Full lip, ANSI, and T strike. The full lip strike is just basically the strike that looks like the letter D because it has a full lip. Okay, and that dimension is 2 1/4 inch tall. It's a horrible picture, but full lip is what is really what it is. Okay, it'll look like that. The next strike would be, of course, that 4 7/8 strike, which will look like this. And that one, this hole is not going to be quite that large, but nonetheless, it's 4 7/8 overall height. And it's 1 1/4. 1 1/4 is a reference to, just to redraw that strike a little bit. 1 1/4 is a reference to the vertical center line of the hole to the edge of the lip. It's that dimension right there, right here, that dimension. Inch and a quarter is that size. Strikes are made in lots of different lip lengths. Lip length is what it's called from the center of the screw. Inch and a quarter is very common. Inch and 5/16, inch and 3/16. However, you can do odd ones. You can do 7/8. You can do inch and 5/8. Whatever the case might be that your application requires. You would need a much shorter lip length if you were dealing with a pair of doors that had a flat astragal installed on the face of the active door, on the pull side of the active door. You might need a much longer lip length if you had a wall. Let's say that this is a much longer lip length would be a scenario like this. You have a very large wall, and you have a let's see. Here's a better example. You have a jamb. Here's your wood frame. Okay. It has a stop applied. Your door swings out. Okay. Except that you have a extremely thick casing. Something like that. Or you might have a wall condition where they've literally brought the wall up for a no line, a no look sort of scenario. So you would need to literally install that strike out here so that the lip was further out and extended out like this, because when the latch bolt that's in this area comes to close, it's going to hit the edge of the frame. So that would be an instance. Or another common instance for an extended lip strike is when you have your same frame, except the door is inset much greater. So if this is an 1 3/4 thick door, let's say that the rabbet dimension from the stop to the outside of the rabbet is 2.5 inch, and that would be considered the inset. The distance from the face of the frame to the face of the door, that's the inset. You could certainly have an inset application. I've seen openings that were 18 inch and the doors were set way in here. 18 inch deep frames because you had pre 19th century construction, a 3-story building where the ground floor walls are extremely thick to hold the weight of the structure above, and those doors are set in the almost in the center of the opening. Okay, so you'd need a really long lip for that, and they make them. Well, another thing that you might need also, if you were doing a job like that, another thing you might really need would be wide throw hinges. You might need a hinge to get you all the way out and around. So extended lip strikes and wide throw hinges do at times go together. Okay. So, the last strike is a T-strike and forgive me, they literally call it T-strike. So a T-strike looks like this. Looks like an ASA strike, except that it's smaller, because if you tipped it 90-degree clockwise, it would look like the letter T, if you use your imagination. Okay? And that's 2 3/4. So 2 1/4 tall strike, 2 3/4 tall strike, 4 7/8 tall strike, 4 7/8 hollow metal, most certainly. Sometimes wood, but mostly hollow metal. 2 3/4 can be on wood or hollow metal. 2 1/4 full lip strikes, that's pretty much only wood, and they refer to the fact that it has a radius corner only. So on your 2 1/4 full lip strike, you'll have a 1/4 inch radius corner there. Well, that's a lip. So that corner there and here are going to be a 1/4 inch radius. They won't be square corner is the point. Okay. Now, what else does this product catalog have to tell us? latches, strikes, trim, finishes, 2 pages worth of functions, then your overview. The rest of this document will talk about all of the Dexter locks. Their C1000 series, that is going to be your grade 1 lock. They're going to get into their grade 1 and grade 2 deadbolts. They have closers and then exit devices. Exit devices from Dexter I am unfamiliar with. I'm sure just an imported, this whole catalog I'm sure is just imported hardware. But nonetheless is branded under Dexter. Okay, let's move on to the installation and template links next. I think what we'll do is we'll dive into the template next and see what that looks like. Now, the template is, this is the identical product, this is the identical piece of paper that's going to come in the box. Literally, what comes in the box is an actual, 50-pound card weight paper template. And it looks a little confusing, but let's not be intimidated. But let's dissect this because there are important things that are happening here. So first of all, they're showing you this point and this point. 2 3/8, 2 3/4, okay? Because you can do this lock at either dimension. And you can obviously see it highlighted here, 2 3/4 and 2 3/8, okay? So there's a number of things. Let's go over them. So 2 3/4, 2 3/8. We're going to talk about these optional through-bolt hole locations in a moment. Okay, you will drill through-bolt holes. You'll have one at 12 and 6. You'll drill a 5/16 hole through the door at this location. Now, 2 3/4. This ought to line up with the same dimensions as the Schlage AL series, or the D series for that matter. And what I'm driving at here is AL53. As we wait for that template to come up. I have a template pulled up here of the AL series door preparation, and you're going to see that it's 2 3/4 as well. It's a 5/16 hole. 1 3/8 plus 1 3/8 is indeed 2 3/4. And the point of all of that is you would be able to use the I had to search for that part number. The part number would be you'd be able to use the installation tool here, the M204-198. A very inexpensive tool, at least at this time. And, I've personally, I'm able to drill scores of doors with this tool. It has a steel bushing in here for that 5/16 bit. You don't want to wear that out by doing anything other than basically in and out motion. But this will absolutely work for the Dexter lock that we're working on, because that's at 12 and 6 and 2 3/4 center as it calls out here. So that'd be a great tool for that. Let's see. So that'd be a handy tool to pick up, and there'll be a link below this video to that tool down here so that you could easily order it should you want to. If you're doing one, maybe not so bad. If you're doing more than one, I'd suggest that tool. It does make life a lot easier. Those tools, those holes become absolutely spot on. So you've got your holes at 12 and 6. We'll talk about the optional holes. What's really important here to note is that there are 3 lines. Flat on bevel, low bevel, high bevel. What does that mean? What that means is this. You can have a door that's square edge. that means you can put that template right over the edge of the door and then mark your holes. That would be appropriate if you had flat on bevel. If you had a beveled door, if you had a door that was beveled, if we were going to exaggerate that a little bit, this would be the low side, this would be the high side. The reason that's important is because we can have, let's just illustrate 4 different edges of doors. Okay? Square, rabbeted, radiused, beveled. The reason the template refers to 3 locations basically is because backset is defined from the center of the thickness of the door. Okay? The reason that that is nice is because the formula is 1/8 of an inch in bevel. If we were to define the bevel is also just simply 3 degree, but the formula is how it's defined is 1/8 in 2. Therefore, for every 2 inches in door thickness, this dimension is 1/8 of an inch. Now we're dealing with an 1 3/4 thick door, or maybe an 1 3/8 door, or any range therein. But if you're going to put that template on the edge of the door for a square edge door, or that if you're going to put that template and reference the flat on bevel on a bevel door, those holes that you're going to drill are going to be in a different location. If I put it here, or if I put it here, or if I put it here. Okay? So be mindful of that. Or for that matter, gosh, here or here. Okay? You have to know what you're dealing with. So this template is not differentiating for the thickness of the door because that would change it marginally. And the purpose of this is just to be mindful that this is where the backset is measured from, the center of the thickness of the door. And if you have a beveled edge door, you need to compensate if you're manually measuring the material. After that, important for high bevel, place outside line at edge of door. For flat doors, place center line at edge of door. For low bevel, place inside line at edge of door. Okay. So if you're on the push side, you'll be low bevel on a bevel door. Pull side would be high bevel on a bevel door. Vertical height is here. Okay. Mark center of door thickness for 1 inch or 7/8 hole, depending on the latch bolt. What they're saying is the hole that you'll drill here is going to be 1 inch or 7/8, depending on the latch. As a rule of thumb, 2 3/4 would be 1 inch, and 2 3/8 would be 7/8. Our catalog link to the latch bolts does not tell us. So all of them are 1 1/8 wide, the width of the faceplate. So you can certainly make a 1 inch hole, but I would use as a rule of thumb, if it's 2 3/8, go with the 7/8 hole. Okay. On this 2 3/4 latch bolt we have, there is a sleeve that's over it that you could easily pull off if you have a smaller hole. So that's how that's accomplished. Back to the template. Do not make the holes for locks without outside through bolt type. Do not make the holes for locks without outside through bolt height. I think what they may be saying is if you're installing this lock, you have to do the through bolts, because through bolts on this lock set do not appear to be optional. Meaning, if you wanted to install this lock without through bolts, you're going to have to physically remove those preps. The chassis does rotate, and when we get to the installation instructions, we're going to see that. So, meaning the chassis rotates where the through bolts can get to over here if you go counterclockwise, or here if it's clockwise. When we hit the installation instructions, again, we will detail that information. And looking at the balance of the template, I don't see anything else on here that's important to mention. And at this point, we are going to now hop over to the installation instructions. So let's get into that. So now let's jump into the installation instructions, and scrolling through these, we'll just review the document and then we'll do it on camera together. There is no reference to how they are modifying the location of the through bolt holes. So looking at the installation instructions, we're going to point out a couple of, and this is the identical document that's included with the lock. I want to point out on the template a couple of important things, and then we're going to demonstrate it on camera. So adjust door thickness, I will demonstrate how to do that. It's factory set for 1 3/4, but there is a very elegant way by which to change or alter the lock setting for the door thickness, a very simple and elegant way. The second thing that I'd like to point out is install the mounting plate. After you get the lock on through the door, the mounting plate will go on first, and you're going to attach the mounting plate with these 2 screws through the small hole here and here to the chassis itself. And right here is where they will thread to, the holes in the chassis, okay, not the through bolt post. So that's step 1. Then step 2 is you're going to take the inside rose assembly, which is this piece, and you will then through bolt it through the top hole and the bottom hole, which will then allow you to thread it right into the through bolts. So the lock, the thin mounting plate is bolted to these 2 small holes. Then the inside rose assembly is through bolted to the through bolt posts here. So there's 4 screws going through the door. Then the interior rose escutcheon snaps onto the plate. Everything else is elementary that's on here, but let's go over it visually on camera. Okay, now we have our lock here, and the first thing we're going to do, just to get going with the hardware, use your pin, insert that into the stem of the interior side. You'll depress the tab, and that lever will come off. And that's the tab right there that you're depressing. And that locks into a groove that's been cut into the inside of the lever that you can kind of see where that small round hole is. Okay, so we'll put that aside. Your scalp or your rose will come off. Your inside rose assembly will come off. Your mounting plate will come off. Okay, so I wanted to get right down to just this part of the lock. Okay, now let's go through the installation instructions in order of how it is here. And again, this is the same document that comes with the lock itself. So looking at the installation instructions, step 1 is to mark the door and to make your and to make all of your preparation. Drill your door. I won't go into the finer points of how to mortise or prep a door for a lock set. That can be a different video. They're showing a real unusual, detail on that jamb. They're showing like a shadow line around the frame itself. That does serve to confuse it, I suppose, a little bit. It's just showing a shadow line. Check the lock for proper backset and through bolt locations. Mark your hole accordingly, as we've discussed in the template review. And step 2 is to, of course, drill your holes. Step in that template tool that we talked about from Schlage earlier. Step 3 is to install the latch. And this is going to take a 2 1/8 inch hole through the door, a 1 inch. You're always safe with 1 inch, or a 7/8 hole into the edge of the door. Then your through bolt holes at 12 and 6. The latch is 2 1/4 by 1.1 inch. This lock preparation is what is referred to as a 161, except that it's an MOD, a modified 161, by adding the lever through holes. 161 by definition is a 2 1/8 inch hole with a 1 inch prep in the edge, 2 1/4 by 1.1 inch, 5/32 deep for the latch bolt. If someone says they want a 161, you don't have to ask anything about the size. It means all of that at 2 3/4 backset, if I haven't said that. Modified because you're doing those through bolt holes, 1 3/8 up to the 5/16 hole at 12, 1 3/8 down to the 5/16 hole at 6 o'clock. Step 4 is installing the strike. You probably have a hollow metal strike, so we will move past that. Step 5, we've already done. We've disassembled the lock. The only other thing that we've not done is really start to talk about these screws that you get. We're not going to use these short screws because they refer to the short screws being used when you are not using through bolts, when you're not through bolting it. I would strongly urge you to not consider not through bolt hole prepping the unit. You can apply a lot of torque on a lever lock, and that's only going to serve to compromise the integrity of the installation, because what happens is as you rotate the lever, it stresses these 2 points right here. This is in the door and is where it needs to be, but that will certainly bend these components, and the lock will not operate correctly. I've walked up to locks and I've seen them look like this, and I've said, well, the lever isn't drooping, the entire chassis has been bent. So those through bolts are really the way that are going to allow you to keep this lock running properly. And an interesting question is it required for a through bolt for a fire rated application? And the answer, in my opinion, would be no. It's not required to pass a fire test. The installation instructions are the governing document. They indicate that you can. The way that I was taught as a certified fire door and egress assembly inspector, again, the installation instructions are the governing document. The installations clearly indicate to use the shorter screws if you're not using through bolts. That means that you can still be compliant with this and this if you're not through bolting it. This is really the important part, although you will want to take note of what is on your label on your door. It will say min latch throw. That's a 1/2 inch. You could have a latch throw that's longer than that. If you have a latch throw requirement that's greater than 1/2 inch, this would not work. You could have 3/4 inch. You could have pairs of doors that will require 3/4 inch. So in our installation, we're going to use the 4 long screws that are here. Okay, and step 5 does give us a nice overview, which is handy because it defines the parts for us. Looking at the exploded drawing and then defining the parts, that's good, but I probably wouldn't rush in to install the material just yet, because you'll skip over important stuff, such as step 6. Adjusting door thickness. Now, it's set to 1 3/4. You're probably not going to have to change this. But if you did, very elegant. I'm not aware of anyone else who does it this way. That says 1 3/8. That says 1 3/4 here, and we're on our line. If you needed to change that, you are literally going to turn the chassis. And as we do so, now it's drawing, I'm rotating it the wrong way. As I rotate this maybe a dozen times, we're going to get to where we will hit the line for 1 3/8. And it is indeed drawing that chassis down, as you can see. Okay, that's how you do that. Okay, so really nice and handy. I'm going to set this back so that the client doesn't get frustrated with installing it. Yeah, right back to 1 3/4. Okay, we're in good shape now. So that's nice. Just rotate that. I've not seen anyone else's lock who does this. I've not seen everyone's lock, but I'm not sure that anyone else does. Step 7, it's important that they're showing you the engagement of the pieces in the retractor, okay, that has to be engaged completely like that, where we have our retractor for the latch here, and these two ears, the ears have to be on the inside of the chassis, right where my fingernails is, and then this portion has to be held inside of the retractor that's there, okay? It has to be installed just like that. You know, they really make locks to be very simple, I think, to put together, some more so than others. This is fairly simple. Step 8 is really the important part. The lock's going to go through the door, then you're going to bring your mounting plate. Now, one thing I didn't mention on the template, there are at the 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock positions, there is a notch. That's to accommodate in the steel door the prong that's here, and the prong that's on the mounting plate. You know that the mounting plate is installed this way because these prongs will be at 9 and 3 o'clock. Okay? That's important to know. If it's a wood door, you don't have to make those notches because those prongs will sink into the wood door. But if it is a metal door, your metal door will be prepped from the factory for that. If you don't have those little semicircles at 3 and 9 o'clock, then the door has been drilled for the lock set, and you will need to get in there and create those preps. Rather than grind this off, you'll just make those preparations. You want those little prongs to help that anti-rotation. So the plate goes on, okay? 2 of the 4 long screws are going to go through this hole, as I said earlier. Sorry, I have that upside down, or backwards. Through this hole into the tapped hole here. Yeah, indeed. Tapped hole here and here. That goes on. 2 screws down here. Then your inside rose assembly will come. And that's where your spring cage is. It's buried inside of here. That's what keeps the lever returning horizontal. That will come down. Then here and here, your other 2 long screws will go into your through bolt posts. At that point, you'll snap your rosette on. That will just simply snap on. Well, actually, it snaps and turns. You'll see that there are some serrations here. So when you put that on, there are a couple of small little teats that are here that will go into the groove, and there are 2 of them that will ultimately snap down. And then what you would do is you would rotate it to get those teats over these little serrations, and that's what will keep it on. So down and clockwise to remove it, down and counterclockwise will remove that. So that's that assembly, and that just does indeed just come off. After that's on, you'll bring your lever. The little hole in the stem goes to that spring-loaded tab, just like so. You push it on, pull on it, make sure it's solid, that it's actually connected. Now you're in good shape. This lock is exactly how it was when we took it out of the box. And we've installed it exactly per step 8, 9, and 10. Step 11, we are dealing with a small format, so there's no function of removing the outside lever. You'll use your cylinder, your control key. You'll insert your cylinder, pull your control key out, test your change keys, your masters, or your top master key. Apparently this can be changed to a classroom function. I did not see that. Turn cam anti-clockwise, also known as counterclockwise, as far as it will go before. Okay, so what they're referring to here is I don't think this can be converted to a classroom function at all. Let's get a tool, and a special tool, and let's investigate that. Okay, so we have our special tool, a slotted screwdriver, and right down there you'll see that plus sign. That's where your tailpiece from your interchangeable core is going to go, and I'm going to use that to emulate the tailpiece. As I rotate that That's spring-loaded. That cannot be changed at all. So that reference must be to... that must be referenced to an entry lock, where you can maybe set it up. So this is storeroom, always locked, as I said earlier, always need a key. A classroom would permit you to insert the key, turn it 360 degrees, pull it out. Now the lever is unlocked if it was initially locked. Put the key in, go the other way, take the key out. Now it's always locked. This is just a storeroom. There's no way to change that, because that has a different cam than what they're showing in the installation instructions. That's it. That pardon me, and that is it. That exhausts our information on the installation instructions. Overall width, about 1 7/8 inches, but again, it's the center line of the screws to the edge of the lip. That's what the 1 1/4 is. And again, that's 4 7/8 inches. Okay. The balance of the parts that are here, I want to take a closer look at the 2 screws for the strike, 2 screws for the latch. Okay. Then they have a little bit of explanation on our tail pieces, and there's a small little shim plate that's in there if you're using a 6-pin cylinder. To show us our 6 and 7-pin tail pieces. As you can see, they are slightly different in length. The 7-pin cylinder is just simply longer. There is this shielding spacer. It says, for highest security, insert a shielding spacer into forks before installing the cylinder. Okay? Like that. So, what that is for is basically this. And Dexter is not the only company who does this. That spacer is, it is possible that you could exploit the lock from the exterior on the locked side if you were to probe all the way through the cylinder, be able to get a probe into the chassis down in here and manipulate the lock. Because you could take an instrument and stick it through the broaching of the cylinder plug all the way through. This is what prevents you, this is what works to prevent you from doing so. Your cylinder will fit on this side. That shield will prevent you from sticking anything back in there and getting it in there and getting the lock turned. Okay? That's why that privacy shield is there, or the security shield. I have never heard of someone exploiting a lock that way, like, oh, I know the guy got in because he exploited it that way. I've never heard of that, but because it must have occurred. They've invented a piece of equipment to help prevent it, so it must be something that they're concerned with. Absolutely install that. It's considered best practice, no doubt. After that, looking at the balance of the data on the extended description of the item, we've covered everything here at length. There is finally a link below this video to the manufacturer's page, where you can pull up not only all of the Dexter products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. Okay. And some prior catalogs as well. Okay. Link to the website, link to the Dexter we sell, a link to the catalog. So that's all handy resources. You know, it's a relatively inexpensive lock. What's good about this lock, one very good thing, it seems to be well made. One very good thing is that it's under that Allegiant umbrella. So when you call for tech support at Dexter, you're probably going to get a lot of people who are very familiar with Falcon and who are very familiar with Schlage. So you're getting an exceptionally talented pool of individuals that you can draw on for technical support. This lock should not require any technical support, but should it, or should some application of Dexter require technical support, Dexter by Schlage, owned by Allegion, has the pool of talent to make sure that you're getting all of the service that you need. They're really great. Just phenomenally great. Any questions on this Dexter C2000 series lock and an 80 function, or if it was a Schlage, it'd be an 80 function, Storeroom function, or any other Dexter product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.